One thing, we don't know why. It doesn't even matter how hard we try. Keep that in mind. I rewrote this rhyme to remind in due time that Ed Bosco's time is a valuable thing. So is Zach Holzman, because he is the king. Talk about all their experiences lent to Midwest FurFest on Kirblog. Once again, by this point, you have closed out the window. But for those of you who haven't, I just have to update that with every time I do a musical intro. Hi, welcome. I am joined on this very special Kirblog for the last one of January by one first-time guest and another who we've not heard from, I think, for a while. I think last time we had you on was maybe the Sonic Adventure 1 versus 2 one. But you first, Mr. Already Been Here. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Edward Bosco, and my jaw is currently on the floor because what just happened?
What happened is I just butchered your favorite goddamn Linkin Park song.
I don't know if that's my favorite one, but you sure did butcher it.
Yes, absolutely. Who are you? What are you? Why do we give a shit about that? The fact that you're here right now.
That's a great question. You might have
Yes.
seen me in this thing called Terrain of Magical Expertise, I think it's called.
Yeah, possibly.
Some douchebag made the show.
Yeah.
But I play the green guy and the skate guy.
Yeah.
So you might know me from that. Yes, I'm a
Good.
voice actor and all-around awful person. I mean, good guy.
Good. And then to the much more handsome, much more nice, much more pleasant, much more sexy first time guest. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Zach, or Timber if you like. I am also a voice actor. Been in a number of things now, and I'm here to talk about today's topic.
Yes, and today's topic was something that was pitched to me by Bosco after his experiences at a particular event towards the end of last year.
You already said the name of it in the song, so
That's true, yes. But in case they didn't catch that because they perhaps couldn't keep up with my amazing rapping stylings, my awful getting everybody to close the fucking window out performance.
I was gonna say, you did a terrible job of roping people in because they've already closed out.
Yes, clearly. Tell us. What are we here? What are you bringing me on here today? No, I agreed to do this because I thought this would be an interesting topic to talk about.
Well, long story short, at the beginning of December, I was invited by Zach to come to a convention that was known as Midwest FurFest. I was in Chicago visiting family, and he was like, "Hey, would you want to come and meet a couple of my pals in this, furry convention?" I was like,
Well,
And
it
he
wasn't
invited
just
me-
that. I also needed your help for the voice acting panel.
Well, yes, and then there was the voice acting panel that he got at the last second and was like, "Could you also help me with this?"
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I can go do this. And so I went there, and I couldn't believe what I experienced. And it was so impactful that I immediately came to you after the convention and was like, dude, if you've got a show and you've got some time to kill, I got some stories. And I also remember that you had talked to Scott about this similar topic. And while we're not going to touch on all of the same stuff, I thought that we could give a different perspective than perhaps he gave the last time he was on here back in June.
Yes, and to talk about that a little bit, for those of you who don't know what we're referring to, over half a year ago now, by the way, because I double-checked what the date was on it, I had Kaiser Neko of Team 4 Star fan, who you've worked with, Mr. Zach, on DBZ of
Great
Dribs.
guy.
He and I did a very cool, very in-depth Kirblog that I would recommend you go check out, literally called What's It Like to Be a Furry? As Scott has been in the furry community for a very, very long time, and he had a lot of really great stories to tell himself, and suggestions to people who are thinking about it, all sorts of different stuff like that. And Bosco wanted to kind of do a sequel to that. Zach has also been in the community for a long time, as far as I know.
Oh yeah, quite a while.
And Bosco, Bosco, I mean, our in joke is
Our
that
in joke, absolutely.
Not our, as in, everybody else's but you, is that you are absolutely a closet furry, which you would attest to the opposite of, and that's perfectly fine.
He is not. I can almost
I'm not, but
guarantee
it's
you at
funny.
this
It's
point.
funny to joke because
It's just easy too.
it's easy, and also I play Scooby-Doo at Universal, so I
Yep.
guess you could call me a professional furry.
Yeah, that's the only reason.
God,
Right, got it.
professional furry.
Yeah,
I get paid to do what Zach does for free.
oh my god, for free. Yeah, I'm sorry. But yeah, no, I guess on that same kind of note, I wanted to do, you wanted to do, and I thought it would be interesting to have the perspective of someone who is, because I mean, when I talk to Scott, I've always had I guess I was kind of the equivalent of you, Bosco, in the last discussion that I had with Scott, because I was the person who's kind of like on the outside looking in, but always had kind of like some intrigue into what that world was like, and wanted to learn more about it. And now by this point, in addition to Scott and Zach, I have several friends from the furry community that have kind of taught me a lot of different things. But I have never been to a convention specifically for people in that community.
You should, man. You should. It's a blast.
I actually have been. Well, we'll talk about that later. But because I want to have Bosco put his experiences first. But I have actually been. I have been considering like, that sounds like that might be a lot of fun, and I've been told about a lot of particularly really good or fun ones that I don't know where they are specifically because I haven't been able to keep track. But Bosco, you also wrote a pretty in-depth blog post a little while ago.
I did. Yeah.
About the weekend that you guys had, and you also hung out with Malcolm Ray of Nostalgia Critic fame.
Yes, I love Malcolm.
And
super great.
True
dude.
story.
And-
we were actually in the same college for a very short period of time. That's where I met him.
Yeah, which was crazy. Like, small world.
He did
And then
our
also, of course,
he did our voice acting panel with us. Actually,
Yep, it was the three of us.
Yep.
Oh, sweet. Okay. And then you saw Scott on the last day.
Yes, we bumped into
right?
Scott.
Scott,
was like, what the heck are
unfortunately,
you doing here? And I'm like, I don't know why I'm here.
I don't know if you guys have heard, but I'm a tiger. Rawr.
He unfortunately
could
could not join us on the panel, but yes, he was in attendance.
Yes.
Yay!
Very nice guy.
All
I'm
right.
glad I got
Well,
to meet him.
I'm going to let you guys take the reins on this. I want Jesus to take the wheel, which means by that, Zach, you start.
It's true. He
Because
does
I
have
look
the
so
Jesus
much like
beard.
Jesus.
That's true.
Well, I guess basically to start, I'll just start with why I was attending this particular convention. I'd attended Midwest FurFest last year in 2014, had the absolute time of my life, and really made it a priority to make it out to this convention for a second year in a row, and had an even greater time of my life. And I was actually really, really happy that Bosco could be there to experience it with me, because Bosco and I have been friends for, it's been 7 years now?
7 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow,
about
that's
7 years
crazy.
now. And we've shared a lot of good times. We've shared a lot of bad times, And it was great to
Like you do
actually
as
share
friends.
with him. Yeah, like any friends. And it was basically great to share with him what ended up probably being the best weekend of my actual entire life.
Wow. Okay. Well, I might ask, I suppose. I mean, I've certainly had some really great times at conventions, and definitely had some years where I thought this was the greatest weekend of my life. So I certainly can understand that feeling. What was it about going to Midwest FurFest this year that made it so special for you?
Where do I begin?
Well, first of all, I got mad laid.
Common misperception that actually
Anyway.
was not a thing that happened.
No, not at all.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, I think the first thing to start with is the voice acting panel. Because I'd applied to do the panel back when they were accepting submissions for programming. This was months and months ago. And I submitted the idea for the panel. It was originally going to be Kaiser, Malcolm, and myself. And the panel didn't go through. So I told Malcolm and I told Kaiser, maybe next year we'll get one, whatever. And, then went about my business, continued planning for the convention, just kind of thinking, well, at least now I don't really have to, plan for anything or, have anywhere that I need to be at any particular time on any day. And then 2 days before the convention, a buddy of mine who works on programming messaged me frantically Timber, do you still want to do that panel? I was like, yeah. And apparently the other panel, the other voice acting panel that had been okayed, the person who's going to be running it was unable to attend. So they wanted to fill it in, and he knew that I still wanted to do it, so he came to me frantically and was like, can you do this? Can you prepare for this in 2 days? And I was like, maybe. So I was able to get Malcolm back on board, wasn't able to get Kaiser back on board. He'd made other plans for that day, totally understandable. And just kind of as a last-ditch sort of thing, since I knew Bosco was already in Chicago, I was like, so, Bosco, here's a question for you. And, basically asked him about, attending this crazy convention with me, doing this crazy panel with me. And we got the panel. We did it. We got it all set up. It was overwhelming to do that panel. First off, we filled the room. Filled the room isn't even an adequate word. We flooded the room. People couldn't even get in.
I'll bet.
People couldn't even get into the room. It was so damn full. So we had maybe about 100 people or so trying to cram into this tiny room meant for maybe 50 people tops. And We had a really productive Q&A session. People had all kinds of great questions. Like, people were really interested in voice acting and actually wanted to know all about it. They weren't just kind of giving us softball questions. They were giving us really good questions. And then we got to do the script reading with people. We had scripts from Dust and Elysian Tale, which some of you may know. Bosco was the he casted it is the word. He did the casting for it, and he also was the voice of Ara. So he brought some scripts from Dust that we could have people come up in front of the panel and perform themselves, just completely for fun. And we would give them critique. They would do another run of it, that sort of thing. And we got a lot of really eager people who came up and did all kinds of really fun reads. They took the direction really well. It was just a great, great panel. And actually, here's a fun little tidbit. The head of programming saw how well we did. He wants us to do the panel again next year, and he's going to give us an even bigger room to do it in. Yeah!
Sweet. Awesome. Okay.
So that panel was really kind of eye-opening for me in terms of, I knew voice acting was, kind of a thing in the fandom. Some people were interested in it. There's a small amount of us in the fandom who pursue this. But it was really an overwhelmingly large response, which made me feel like, wow, there's a much bigger interest for voice acting in the fandom than I thought. That's so exciting for me. So, yeah, the panel was... I would say it was the highlight of the weekend for me. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, by the way, just to rewind real quick, because I want to give you some credit, and me. We were both also in Dust and Elysian Tale as some sexy lizard men in the final stage, which was cool. And it's interesting you say that too, because I've also had the fortune of getting to do some voiceover instructional advice-esque panels like this, including a couple with Bosco back at Otakon a few years ago.
Yeah, it was basically, Chris, it was that panel. We just did it for this particular group of people.
For this con, which is what I figured, of course. And, it's funny. I mean, of course, at an anime convention, I think it's a little bit more expected that, because I think that a lot of interest in general, from people to get into voiceover kind of came from a lot of anime conventions specifically where, voice acting is I guess, something that people are more cognitively thinking about or aware of, or I guess whatever way you want to kind of put it. So now it's become much more of a well-known thing in general on the internet.
Yeah.
And so it's not surprising to hear that, especially because, I imagine, because Scott, and by the way, to everybody, I apologize if I repeat any information from the one that I did with Scott a long time ago, but just bear with me. I imagine that a lot of people in the furry fandom who are interested specifically in voiceover probably look back at some of the greats who have been doing this for so long, because guys like some of your heroes, Zach, such as Charlie Adler, Rob Paulson.
Rob Paulson was actually a guest of honor at Anthrocon in 2007.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
No, he's right. No, he's right.
Awesome. Yeah, and see, that's the thing. It's back in the 90s when there were, tons and tons of cartoon shows with anthropomorphic characters, all of those, A-list amazing cartoon actors were in all of those shows.
Oh, yeah.
So I imagine, people in the furry fandom who are I'm interested in this, cartoon voiceover kind of thing, probably look to those guys, as opposed to more in the anime fandom where, people probably think first of people like Steve Bloom and Kari Wahlgren, guys like that. So that to me, that must be kind of an interesting, different kind of approach to it too. But also with Dust and Elysian Tale, because that was a very, very successful game that had an virtually all anthropomorphic.
No, it was entirely
cast.
Anthropomorphic. There was just one character that wasn't an anthropomorphic animal.
That's true.
That's the one that Bosco played.
Weapon.
The one that I played, yes.
The one and only one that wasn't covered in fur or scales or feathers was the one voiced by Bosco.
Woe is he. But anyway, so carry on. So it was a big hit. You had a huge full room, which I absolutely am not surprised to hear either. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what else was kind of happening over the weekend that was really making it specifically for you, Zach, that this was standing out for you?
Well, specifically for me, a convention presents an opportunity, and this is true for, I would say, just about all furries. It presents an opportunity to simply be myself in a way that I cannot normally be outside. If I go to work tomorrow and, greet all my coworkers with hugs, they're going to be like, what the hell's going on here? there's just a certain way that you can behave at a convention that you just can't behave anywhere else. And everybody is there to have a good time. Everybody is there to have fun. And there's so much energy in the building, so much passion in the building. And you just feed into that energy almost right off the bat. And there's so much going on at any convention. I mean, there's DJs doing sets. There's a lot of dancing going on. There are dancing competitions going on. There's the artist gallery. There's the dealer's den. There's the gaming room. Every room in the entire hotel is having a room party at some point. It's just a constant whirlwind of activity, basically. And I think that's really a great thing about furry cons that I haven't necessarily experienced at other conventions. Like, I mean, I did Comic-Con for a number of years. And Comic-Con is great, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of a lot of people are there for business. It doesn't feel as personal to you. Like at a furry con, that's just all gone. It kind of feels like
it's also very overwhelming.
It is extremely overwhelming. Furry cons are not even a fraction as big. Midwest FurFest, I believe the attendance was something like 5,500 people. And it feels
the actual number, not to be that nerd,
Go
if
ahead.
I remember correctly, is 5,606 according to the convention's Twitter page, which was actually a 25% jump in attendance. And that, again, that's according to their Twitter page.
For me, the single most important thing, though, that I get at furry cons that I don't get anywhere else is a sense of belonging. It feels like I'm coming home after being, long gone from it for a while. It just feels cozy. It feels cozy.
Cozy. I imagine there's got to be. I don't know. You said this was the second one that you've been to, but I imagine there's probably a lot of people, like in general, that you get to see at these that you don't normally get to see.
Absolutely.
Otherwise.
Oh no, I get to see people who I talk to on the internet every day, and I finally get to see these people in person. I get to give them hugs. I get to go out and get food with them. I get to drink beer with them. It's such a wonderful experience. I mean, this is a universal thing. Everybody who mostly interacts on the internet and then happens to be able to go to a convention gets to do this. But with the furry fandom, because you are so linked to it on a personal level, like you're not just there as, a fan of a show or a fan of a game. Like you are there because you are a part of this. That personal connection you have to it is so special.
Mm-hmm. So Bosco,
yes.
Shifting to you, as this was your cherry popping experience of going to a convention like this. Well, you've been to cons before.
I've been to a lot of cons, and they're of all different varieties.
See, this is the funny thing, because you don't consider yourself to be an anime fan at all.
I don't consider myself to be an anime fan. I go to Anime Expo almost every year. I don't consider myself a Comic-Con fan or a comic book fan. I went to Comic-Con like 4 years in a row. I'm not a furry, and now I went to Midwest FurFest. So I just end up at these places.
Yeah. Yes, clearly.
So I just go to these conventions because I find ways to have a good time. That's
okay.
Really
Well, actually, to first of all, before we go into your information, because I don't want to have you have to kind of take away from, because this blog post that you wrote had a lot of really really in depth great information, and I actually do want people to check that out if they have the opportunity. I'll have a link to it in the description. So, I mean, and if you do want to repeat some stuff that was on the blog post as well, you're more than welcome to. But what are maybe some things that maybe weren't touched on in it, or any particular kind of information just about the experience that whole weekend that you feel like sharing with the world? Because I mean, that was the reason you wanted to do this.
Yeah. So the big thing that I took away, and again, as somebody coming from the outside and looking in, I was exposed to a lot of the biases and the stigma that the media puts out there, that we as a society put out there about this particular group of people. And the reason why it was so eye-opening is because for a long time I couldn't understand the visceral hate that is flung at this group of people. So I was I wanted to experience firsthand what they were all about. And what I learned is not only are the perceptions that a lot of us have completely wrong, not even just they kind of happen sometimes, they are completely wrong, but these group of people are some of the most accepting, loving, inclusive people I have ever met in my life. And I walked away from that convention saying, if I could be more like them, I would be a better person. Just in terms of the way I interacted with people, the way that I would phrase things that I would say, the way that I would go and interact with people on the street. Like if I just included more of what they do at these conventions, and just how accepting that they are and interested in, why are you here? Why is somebody from the outside looking in at this convention? Like if I just took that natural curiosity and acceptance out into the real world, I would be an absolutely better person. And so in 2016, I made a New Year's resolution because of this convention. I'm going to try to be a better person. I'm going to try to be more like they are, because they are just, it's incredible. And we all joke about the furry handshake is a hug. Mm-hmm. And that's something I had to get used to.
Pause for a sec.
Yeah.
I do actually want to go into something here.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm pretty sure that Scott, I didn't really talk about this, or if we did, like not too like far in detail. So, we're talking a little bit about misconceptions about the furry community, but also specifically furry cons. And remind me, what was it? What show was it? Was it Law and Order?
It was CSI.
Or something?
No, it was. You're thinking of CSI.
Okay.
You're thinking of the CSI.
CSI.
Episode,
Okay,
yeah.
so there, and I never saw this, but but help me out. There was an episode of that show that involved a character going to a furry convention, and the personification of it, from what I've been told by everybody, is completely over-exaggerated and misconceived, like unfair, negatively biased kind of deal of it.
Pretty much.
And unfortunately, I mean, because I don't know if too many people give a shit about CSI now, but at the time it was a very prominent show.
Yeah.
And a lot of people saw that and said, "Oh, this is what that's like. That's fucking weird." Mm-hmm. So let's address that elephant first. What is it that you think like is so misconceived and unfair? Not even just the CSI episode, but just this sort of perception of people in general about the furry community and fur cons in general.
I think the general perception about furries is that we've been kind of dumbed down to like this completely irrelevant group of people. The common misconception that everybody has is that, we're all basement dwelling 30-somethings who are complete perverts, whatnot have you. And I mean, CSI certainly added to that stigma. There was also MTV's Sex 2K that didn't help out. There was a Vanity Fair article way back when that didn't help out. So the media and furries have always not been friends, let's just say. The media has not done us any favors up until more recently, actually, and I'll get back to that in a moment. But yeah, basically, a lot of the hate comes from people just don't really think that we do anything that interesting or do anything that exciting, and we're all just, kind of do-nothings. We're all just basically losers. And it couldn't be more incorrect, actually. But as far as what I mentioned a second ago, some actual very positive media stories actually started coming out. There was an incident at Midwest FurFest the year before in 2014, which I actually attended myself, where there was an incident where, due to a lot of the misperceptions and due to a lot of the hate that is directed towards the fandom, there was an individual who went to this event and actually wanted to hurt people, who actually wanted to cause people harm. And what this individual did was they smashed a jar of chlorine in a stairwell, and the gas spread throughout the hotel. 19 people actually had to be hospitalized. They were all fine after a day of care. But, this person actually intended to physically harm us, even though we're a pretty harmless group of people. Harming others, it's not really on our MO. We're a very peaceful group of people. We know likey to violence. It's not our thing.
Oh my
And
God.
after this happened, actually a lot of really positive news stories started stemming out of this very negative event, where Huffington Post did an article, NBC did an article, NPR was even talking about this incident. This incident was a big deal. It was classified as domestic terrorism by the FBI, if I'm not mistaken. And so after this event went down and all these positive news stories started coming out about us, I think that kind of made people go like, oh, maybe maybe I have been wrong about this all along. Let's check it out. Let's look into this a
maybe we're
little
just
bit more.
being dickholes about it, and we should lay off a little bit.
Well, I mean, a lot of people are not responsible, because the misconceptions are really hardwired into people's brains. And I mean, I don't want to lay the blame on other people. Like, they just didn't know any better. It's not that they're, terrible people. They just didn't know any better. And I think now the tide is beginning to turn, where people are starting to know better, where people are starting to learn about this and are genuinely curious about us from a positive angle, not so much from a condescending, judgmental angle. People actually want to know about us now. And I think that's really cool.
So, Bosco, this was okay. You've our inside joke with you, because and it is obviously it's just tongue in cheek. We're only just giving you shit, but our joke was stemming from the fact that you have you've known and been associated with a lot of people in the community for a very, very long time.
Actually, that isn't actually true. Zach is one of the first people that I ever met that has been in this community. And in fact, up until recently, I had only ever known 2, maybe 3 that were actually active in the community. I didn't know anybody in this. I knew
well
of
then
it.
clearly,
So,
then Zach, this is all your fault then. Clearly,
yeah, it's all
Actually, even when Bosco and I first met back in 2009, that actually was when I had kind of drifted away from the fandom for a little bit. So I wasn't even active in the fandom at the time that we met.
Okay. But either way, but the more specific point being, Bosco, this was really your first like actual hands-on kind of experience with that world.
Yes.
Because I mean, the Scooby-Doo job, like, that's a job. Like that's it could basically be considered a separate thing entirely from, from the furry community, more or less.
I mean, it really is. It's the difference between, and I grew up around sports. I mean, it's no secret that I'm a huge sports fan. Look at sports mascots. They do the exact same thing that you'll see at these conventions. I do the exact same thing when I go to work. It's just as Zach mentioned before, the personal aspect of it that kind of gives it this different flavor. But when you break it down to its most basic form, it is people in a costume performing, and that's mascotting, that's costuming, that's fursuiting. It's all the same stuff with just little different tweaks.
It's interesting too because I'm realizing that we definitely didn't talk about this, Scott and I, because I don't think it ever even came up. But I realize that working in suits and stuff like mascot suits and things like that, whether it's for a sports team or for like Universal or Disney or whatever, is almost kind of like, because I think about Zootopia, where Zootopia is coming out, and I'm sure there's going to be a shit ton of kids who don't even like the idea of being a furry or the furry community or whatever doesn't even occur to them. It's just, oh, this is like a really cute, fun movie with animal characters because animals are cool and they make for great cartoons, kind of thing. Where like it's the makings of it and like I guess the how do you say the aspects of what you would consider part of that world, part of your world, are there, but you're not really thinking about it. It's just, or even like a kid who watches Pokemon on Saturday morning and they're not thinking about, oh, I like this anime. It's like, oh no, I like this TV show that I'm watching on Cartoon Network on Saturday mornings, kind of thing.
I can absolutely. Go ahead.
I think I do believe Zootopia will actually have a great impact on the fandom, and here's why. You see a lot of subcultures popping up nowadays who are heavily attached to a show or a game. My Little Pony, for example, people started watching this show and then creating characters, their own personal characters, based off of this show. This was even starting to happen with Steven Universe. People are now creating personal characters they identify with from that show called Gem Sonas now. And I think maybe people who watch Zootopia will maybe do that same thing, kind of create an identity based off of that movie, maybe not necessarily realizing how heavily tied into the fandom that it is. And then maybe later the realization will hit them and they'll go, oh, wait a minute, have I been doing this whole time, really? And then they'll start looking into the fandom and learning more about it. And then that's when the light bulb will click on and they'll go, oh, okay, this is my thing. This is my thing. So that's kind of what I'm honestly hoping to see it. I think it's really exciting.
I didn't think about that.
The movie was not
I would not
made,
be surprised.
The movie was obviously not made for furries, obviously, but I still think it will have a tremendous impact on the fandom.
Yeah, and I didn't think about that, but I would not be surprised at all if that ends up happening, just because of like, again, it comes down to people don't like really think about it too hard, and they're just doing like whatever they think would be fun or enjoyable.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, I have a Sona now. I guess that is technically part of that.
Yeah.
And I guess on that same kind of note, Bosco, the other thing I was getting to about your level of involvement. So you do not have a Sona.
No.
Right.
No kind of character or anything like that. There just are a lot of parallels between what I've done, obviously the mascotting, because I've been Scooby, I've been a box troll, I've been Darth Vader for JonTron's thing, obviously.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, no big deal or anything.
Well, it's not about that, so I'm not trying to bring emphasis to it. But what I'm saying is I've done a lot of different things. I grew up around sports, so watching people run around in a costume is not really a big deal. So by going to this convention, it was jarring when I walked in the door, and there were moments when people would interact with me where I was like, this is a little different, I don't know. But that eventually faded over the course of the weekend, and I just realized these are just guys performing. And I found myself worrying, and I say this in the article, I found myself worrying less about how kind of weird it was realizing these are all people in animal costumes, and more about, hey, that guy's animating really well. Oh, he's got some great poses in his pictures. Oh, that one could definitely use some more energy. oh, that guy is talking to a tree and nobody's even watching. That's great interaction. That was actually one of Zach's friends. Like, nobody was around, and he was just interacting
Aura.
with this tree.
That was Aura.
Yeah,
one of the best suit performers I know. I love watching him.
And
suit.
so, as somebody who has been doing what they're doing, albeit as a profession, I could appreciate the level of skill and talent, and understood, like, during the dance competition. I love dancing, but I know how hot it is in those costumes. I've had to dance as Scooby. It's very, very draining. I mean, dancing is hard as it is, but when you do it in those costumes, you're almost exerting double the energy just from how much you sweat and have to push through it, and then by the end, you're just exhausted. So to see people be able to do that and do it very, very well, much better than I ever could, I was able to have a level of appreciation for that.
And the dance competition itself is such a wonderful, wonderful event in the fandom, because I think...
and they're so good. Good grief, man.
I mean, not only are the dancers just absolutely out of their minds in terms of their talent level, god damn, but I think it's one of the places in the fandom where you most see how much we support each other and how much we grow with each other. Just to give an example here, you remember Kyo, right? Who eventually won the competition?
Oh, yeah, the very last answer.
Yeah, the very last guy. Yeah, he eventually won the competition. When they called everybody out to, call out third place, second place, first place, there was kind of this air in the room. You kind of felt like a lot of people wanted Kyo to win because he absolutely tore up the floor. And then, third place got named, second place got named, and then there was a big drum roll for first place, and a lot of the other dancers were all pointing at Kyo. We're all pointing at him. They wanted him to win. They wanted him to succeed. He was their competition. They wanted him to win because they knew he deserved it. And that's such a great example of how much we in the fandom support each other. And I think that's one of my absolute favorite parts about being a part of this fandom, too, is just how much we really do truly support each other.
In terms of talking about talent, too, and even going earlier when you were talking about Rob Paulson being a guest of honor at one of the other conventions, something that I think Scott and I did go over before is that, from what I understand, a lot of really amazing industry professionals that work at like major animation studios and things like that will go to these conventions. Sometimes not even as guests. Sometimes they'll just go to like be part of that.
Well, yeah.
Which I've been hearing about for a really long time, and I think that was one of the first things that made me really intrigued about going, because to find out that a lot of people in the animation world are also part of the furry world was not surprising to me at all, actually.
Well, yeah, just because art is such an integral part of the fandom, and I don't just mean drawing, drawing, painting, that sort of thing. I mean art of all mediums, writers, musicians, animators, photographers, videographers, everything under the sun.
I would even say the costume makers. I mean...
Yeah, totally the suit makers.
Just to go on a separate tangent, I had an opportunity to talk to one of Zach's friends who's a costume maker, and the amount of money that these guys spend on their costumes, we're talking thousands of dollars. We're talking... You think voiceover demos are expensive. You could make a couple of voiceover demos for the price of one of these costumes. Like, they are that expensive to make, between the materials and crafting it to somebody's body.
I'm going to say on average about $2,000 on average.
At least. And if you want a good, like, I did some research before we came on the podcast. If some of the ones that Zach was showing me, like the more well-known companies, you're talking 3, 4, 5, 6, upwards of $10,000
in some cases, yes. And
for
a lot of
these really detailed costumes.
And a lot of these companies are able to do this full-time as their profession, because they get enough orders in and they can sustain themselves doing it. And that's why I think the level of craft in terms of these fursuits has grown so much. I mean, you look at fursuits from 10 years ago versus fursuits that are being made now, it's night and day, like the level of difference.
I'm going to be real. There were some costumes that I saw at this convention that were better than some of the mascots I see in like the NBA. Like,
dude, right?
Yeah.
Seriously. There's some incredible suits.
I got to say, I know more than a couple people who, for a time, were making like a living off of just doing furry art commissions for people.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of money to be made there.
Full-time.
Zach and I both know people.
I know several.
I know people that aren't even part of the fandom that do the artwork just because there's money in it. Like, it's a very lucrative business.
Because people.
Chris, you should get on that. Why aren't you on the hype machine yet?
Seriously,
truly, I should. Yeah.
Seriously.
No, pay me. I will draw your Sona immediately. Sonic or Pony or otherwise.
Yeah.
I don't even care. Yeah. Well, no, that's actually on that same kind of note. On a little side note, same kind of side note. Good, I did it. When I was doing the upwards of like, I don't even know how many hundred anymore background characters for Tome for the second season alone, I had a huge amount of furry characters that I had to draw. And in fact, actually, if those of you who follow the series, in fact, maybe Zach wouldn't even be surprised. Maybe you might know of the guy. I think his screen name was like Sovi Kurose, something like that. He had donated several times, and he'd had his background character not only around the show a lot, but he was his character was also in the show, and because like kind of more prominently as a cameo because he had won some of the special events. Because he was such a dedicated, I want to like give him credit, seriously, Sovi, if you're listening to this, because he had donated to the couple times that we had done some eBay auctions where, hey, if you win, I'll put you in the Nylock theme song music video, or if you donate and win this auction, then I'll give you a speaking line in the tournament episode or whatever. And I actually had, fittingly enough, I had Kaiser Neko voice his character who had won.
Cool.
As I thought that would be, only appropriate.
Well, of course.
And with not to out him, but like he spent like a fair amount of money to win some of those auctions because he cared that much about my stupid little web show.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my god, dude! Like, I not just him, of course, like everybody who spent that money, and even the people who donated only like however much it was to get the background characters too. All the people who did that. Were incredible. And it was so fortunate that when I was drawing all the background characters, I had so many, like, there were, honest to God, I'm not exaggerating, there were so few, like, lame-looking character designs that I had, like, no fun drawing. The grand majority of them were really inventive, really cool, and some of, like, amongst the most creative were the anthropomorphic characters.
Yeah.
And I was getting like cool choices of like animals that like, because a lot of them will often be like dogs and foxes, not to call you uncreative, Zach.
Well,
but a lot of them,
me.
But a lot, oh no, red guy, when did you get here? But a lot of them obviously, would be stuff like foxes and, a lot of mammal kind of characters. But there were like, fish and birds and horses and all these different kind of things. There were even some pony characters that I did get creative with and try to do some cool things. And even just again, on outside looking in, as an artist, getting to draw cool, like interesting looking animal characters just as a break from all the humans that I'm typically drawing all the time was a joy. And, and to see like an entire like convention center worth of people who are all as fully like dedicated, because we keep going back to that, like it's a level of like dedication and like care and love, really.
Absolutely.
That's all put into that.
Oh,
like it
we
really
love our
does sound
characters.
like such a like it's such a like healthy kind of like atmosphere to be around.
I agree.
Honestly.
Well, and
I couldn't agree more.
anthropomorphic animals are anthropomorphic animals are not something that are revolutionary or even something that's been happening in the last century or 2 centuries. I did a little bit of research, and they're going back 40,000 years. There is a lion sculpture. It's called the Lion Man of Holstein-Stadel, which was found in a German. That's the name of the cave in Germany. It was found in 1939, carbon dated 40,000 years old. It's since been named the Lowenmensch, which literally means lion human. So 40,000 years ago, this concept was still around. You have the ancient Egyptians who had Anubis, who was a jackal, and Horus and Ra, who had like falcon heads a lot of the time.
Sobek. Yeah.
Set, exactly. Or you had literature in 1896. You had The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. You had Alice in Wonderland in 1865 with Lewis Carroll, who had anthropomorphic characters. And this is over 200 years ago. Like, this is not a new concept. We've always, as a society, as a people, had a fascination with animals that had human-like characteristics. And let's not even forget, we all evolved from them anyway. So there's a natural connection between that. So I don't think it's all that strange that this is as popular and will become even more popular as it is.
And even just looking at our generation, I mean, for Christ's sake, like, again, almost all the fucking cartoons in the 90s were all animal
Absolutely.
characters.
Look at all these
Just
Disney.
about.
You look at the Lion King. You had Beauty and the Beast, and you had Aladdin, and they all had, even if they weren't super,
Even if they weren't
recognizable
fully,
characters,
even if they
were
didn't
small,
walk
like,
upright, they still talked.
Yeah, like
Oh,
Iago
yeah.
pretty much acted like a parrot, but he was still funny and talked like a human. But he still looked
But-
and behaved like a parrot.
By the way,
sitting on the
I'm,
shoulder.
I'm reminded of something real quick, just
Yeah.
because I want to put this out here because this is hilarious. So me and Mike Lucas, we've been borrowing Ben Diskin and Heather's copies of Kingdom Hearts, the HD ports, and Mike and I have been playing through Kingdom Hearts 2. We just finished all of the main like Disney World stages in the game. I loved how Square and Disney, whoever made this decision, was smart enough to place the Lion King level as the very last one that you do, because they knew it was the light at the end of the tunnel because of how successful and how much people fucking love the Lion King.
Oh, yeah.
And how excited they were to go to that level, have Sora be transformed into a lion cub, and get to run around as a lion cub and fight Animal Heartless.
Basically. And
It's built into all of
and it
us.
continues to grow because now they have Lion Guard, which is the new series completely
That's
based
right.
on Lion King. So like
That's
it
right,
never
yeah,
goes
yeah.
away.
It's making a comeback.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. By the way, I don't even think we talked about Shady Vox either. Who?
Yeah, Shady is part of the community.
right.
Incredibly. Yeah, he's becoming more and more prominent on the music scene on YouTube. Has been a furry as long as I've known him. Has always had a lion Sona, and he's totally just like cool about. I don't think he's ever been to a fur con before. I
Oh,
feel
he
like
needs to attend.
I feel like he
That's where the
might
magic
have,
is.
but I don't know for
That's
sure.
where the magic is.
And there are conventions all over the world. Like it's not just
Literally
in
all
America.
over.
There are big
Oh,
conventions
yeah.
all over the world.
And the
Have you,
and-
Zach?
and
Have you
more
been to
keep
any like
popping
in
up.
Europe or anything?
In Europe, no, too expensive. But I mean, they keep popping up
Fair
all
enough, yeah.
over. I mean, the overall attendance count for furry conventions in 2015 has finally eclipsed 50,000.
Wow.
Like, there are that many people going to all these conventions all over the world. You have them happening pretty much every other weekend at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if sooner rather than later they start happening every weekend.
Okay. So.
Go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say you mentioned something earlier and I didn't get a chance to fully explore, but you said what were some things in the article that I or some things I would have liked to have put in the article. One of the biggest culture shocks was when I was being introduced to all of these different people that Zach knew, and even just bumping into people randomly and starting conversations. There are a lot of really smart people in these conventions. I was talking to people who were going for their PhDs. I was talking to people going for their masters, therapists, doctors, lawyers. Freaking one of the people I
Cops,
talked to was
firefighters,
at cop. Yeah, absolutely.
Scientists.
Somebody was a marketing executive pulling in 6 figures, which is more money than I've ever seen in my life. And it's like there is so much, not just talent within the community, but the stuff that they do outside of the community. They are extremely well-rounded people, very mature people. And I feel like there's that misperception of, oh, they're just the immature kids who live in their mom's basement and this is a thing that they do on the side and they get to be all weird. And that's just not the way it is. I didn't see that.
Totally. Yeah, and you know, it's funny because I really connect with that in particular because, like, for instance, Zach, you'll appreciate this because you're a fan of good old One Piece.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know,
Yes, one pie.
in the
Shut up,
in
Bosco.
the anime world, which, you know, I mean, anime fandom has gotten to a point where like it's a little bit. I feel like it's less looked at as, oh, that's a weird thing, you know, by like the mainstream, like the layman, as opposed to the furry fandom, just because of like how much. Well, I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe not. Maybe you could argue that, but either way, the point is, I still see people who think that same kind of misconception. But I look at like the One Piece podcast, for instance, which Zach Logan, who's kind of the head honcho of that, he's a lawyer and he's a damn good one. And his free time outside of, you know, the years that he spent, you know, going to fucking law school and doing his goddamn job, is he spends countless hours dissecting through this long running, like 10-year plus anime series. And he wrote this giant in-depth article about like all these things with the lore and like what all these you know different things are going on. If any of you who are One Piece fans have seen that article on the podcast website about the Blank Century and what that might be, you know, and what the One Piece itself might be itself, you know, he wrote that. Like, there are people just like Zach in like, you know, who are hardcore fans of anime in general, like a particular show or like a particular genre or whatever like that. And, you know, because I think about, yeah, it's the same kind of thing where there's this misconception of like, oh, you like cartoons, you like something that's like associated with a kid type of thing, like a childlike sort of thing or whatever, that you have this fascination, but you're also a functioning adult and you have a very, very like, you know, accepted role in society, you know, like a doctor or a lawyer or a working artist or whatever you want to go with, etc. I feel like there's such like justification, like, yeah, take that. We're not fucking weird, or maybe we can be weird, but we're still functioning normal human beings. So deal with it.
I mean,
okay?
there's that idea.
You know
there is that idea that at some point you are supposed to outgrow certain things. We never did, but we still grew up to be successful adults.
I mean, think about what we do for a living. The three of us play pretend for a living.
We play pretend.
That's literally what we do for our job.
That's exactly what I do all the time in the fandom. You know, I play pretend behind the microphone constantly, and then I keep playing pretend when I'm not behind the microphone. You know what I mean?
And I think the big thing is you can find reasons to not like it. You can find reasons to avoid it. You can find reasons to say, oh, yeah, that's a thing that exists, and then walk away. Or you can say, oh, there are things that I have in common. There is a commonality. There is, oh, I watched the cartoons. Oh, I played Star Fox as a kid. Oh, you know, I watched this movie, Robin Hood, back in the 70s. Yeah. I'm going to go see Zootopia. You can find the commonality, and you don't have to be a furry to have a conversation about it. You don't have to be a furry to go to these conventions and have a good time. Otherwise, every time I went to AX, I would be miserable. Every time I go to Comic-Con, I would be miserable. You can find ways to have a good time.
And it's especially because there are now such a wide umbrella of interests that people in the fandom fall into. I mean, you were talking about in your article how when you go to anime conventions or Comic-Cons, like, there aren't that many sports fans. That's so not true in the fandom, though. There are tons of sports fans in the fandom. There's an interest for literally everything under the sun in the fandom because it's grown so fast and so quickly that you have people coming in who are into just about, you know, anything, really. That's why you have all these, you know, people from all these different career fields. That's why you have all these content creators who are creating content in all kinds of mediums. It's just grown so huge.
No, for sure. Yeah, the sports thing blew my mind. That's more so at AX. I don't run into a lot of sports fans, or even in voiceover. Like, I just don't run into a lot of actors or directors that are more so directors and producers that like it, but like the actors aren't super into it. I know a couple.
Sure.
But yeah, I went to this convention and like everybody had a jersey, or somebody was your friend Strobes was a Sixers fan, and I was
That's
like,
right.
What? You like basketball?
Yeah.
We have to talk.
Yeah.
It wasn't about it.
There's something for everyone in the fandom nowadays. Something for everyone.
Another little couple minor side notes I wanted to just tackle before we move on. Sure. First of all, because I'm thinking about this on the topic of One Piece. To those of you who have may or may not have been keeping up with the most recent storyline in the manga right now, without spoiling too much, I'll just say a couple things, such as the characters are currently they're in a society that is made up entirely of anthropomorphic characters. And what I love is just such poetic justice, because God, this is so true. So Sanji, the cook, for those of you who, again, don't know the series, his criteria for going bonkers is, oh, there's a hot lady around. I've got hearts in my eyes and I'm spinning around and going nuts and hitting on them. And he is attracted to the furry women. And all is right with the world.
Oh, my God.
So much to be justified. And then the other funny thing was in regards to the playing pretend note. I can't speak too much about this, and Bosco, you might already know where I'm going, but I'll say that Bosco and I had the privilege last year of working on a voiceover project.
Oh yeah,
that I will only say involved anthropomorphic characters,
Yep.
And I was actually disappointed, believe it or not, to find out that when we went in to record, and we actually got to record together, which was a lot of fun.
Yep.
That our characters, in fact, were not anthropomorphic.
We were like the only two humans in the darn script, and we were like, really?
And I was like, oh,
what?
And I was so upset because I'm like, oh, but I wanted to have a fur character. I was like actually kind of disappointed. It was still fun, but I was like actually kind of disappointed. Yeah, I was like, oh man, I wanted to be I can't even say what the animals were. I can't even give any hints, but that should be coming out, I think, this year, and you'll probably be able to figure out what it is when it gets announced. But yeah, that was a shit ton of fun. Anyway, okay, so sorry, more on topic. I just needed to toss that bullshit in there.
Good.
So talking about, I almost want to make this into like a pitch. Like I am already interested, but even also kind of doubling for the people who are like on the cusp or maybe never even thought about it before. So I want to go back a little bit to sort of the misconceptions. So Zach, you said before that you're a hugger.
Yeah.
You think that your work colleagues would be like, whoa, what? That's weird. Why are you touching me right now? You know. But at a furry con, everybody's just like, dude, yeah, whatever, like totally just into that.
Let me
furry
interject
handshake,
real quick. That is the I learned that real quick. I kept trying to shake their hands, whether they were in costume or not. And,
like, nope,
they looked at me like I was crazy, and then they were like, "Come here, hug me," and I was like, "What?" And Zach was like, "No, he wants you to hug him." What do you mean? No, he wants you to hug him. No, but I want to shake it, and then they would just hug you, and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, all right, I'm being hugged." Because I'm not a huge hugger, but like by the end of the convention, I just had to learn that that's what you do.
I've over the year, I think, funnily enough, because of anime fandom, I think I've also become more of a hugger, like in general, like in my real life.
Yeah,
to the point where sometimes I even weird people out, and they're just like, "What? Oh, okay.
Why are you hugging me?" Oh, I'm sorry. It's just I was at a convention,
I'm just used to it. No, even actually, when we were at AX this past year, Justin Cook from Funimation was there. And I hadn't seen him in like maybe like a couple of years by that point. He's like, "Oh no, dude, bring it in, give me a hug." And I'm just like, "Oh, okay," like. But here's the thing. On that same kind of note, like just talking about it, like that's a wonderful kind of thing. But do you also feel like maybe for again the layman, is that something that would put people off? Like, oh, I don't know, I don't want people touching me, especially not in those weird suits or whatever. Like, do you feel that's like offhandedly something that like people get kind of apprehensive about? Fairly or fairly?
If I could take this one first, just because
ahead.
I can absolutely relate to that point, and then Zach absolutely follow up. It was completely different for me. I'm not a huge hugger. I'm normally a handshake guy. The most I'll do is like that sports hug that you'll see where it's like the quick like pat or something.
Yeah.
That's about the extent that I don't give like full on hugs. That's just not my style. And so it was extremely off-putting initially to like reach out your hand to shake with somebody, and they're like, "Here's a hug." And and granted, there were a couple of times where somebody would hug me and they'd give me the little nose thing, and I'd be like, "Okay, that was a little different." But I had to realize I'm in their world, so to speak, and not everybody. It happened very rarely, and everybody does it differently. But the hug specifically, when you initially start engaging like that, it is very different. A lot of us, or at least myself, are not big huggers, like full on hugs. But by the end of the convention, I was like, "Oh, this is kind of different, and it's kind of nice, and it's a great way to be like, hey man, I accept you for you, and you accept me for me. It's like, get in here." And it grew on me. And so I would stop shaking by the end of the convention. I'm like, well, I know where this is going. I'm just going to, here we go.
What I will say.
So, yeah, I think initially it's jarring, but I think you eventually get open up to it because it's just a very natural thing to do.
Yeah. What I will say, though, is that I think we very much do respect people's personal boundaries and people's personal space. Had you truly not been into the hug thing and just not wanted to be touched at all, and you had said that, they would have gone, okay, that's fine. And then they would have shook your hand. I mean, because we are all about, we respect the notions of there's a right time and a right place for everything. Not everything is for everybody. If you are among us and you are not comfortable with something, okay, we respect that. That's cool.
And that is 100% true. Nobody did anything that I was like, if I were to go, oh, no, can we not? They would absolutely stop.
So, something just occurred to me.
Yes.
I legit didn't think of this beforehand, but I feel like this might be a really good analogy. So another lovely mutual friend of ours, Mr. Joshua Tomar,
Yes.
He loves to travel, and he's been to quite a few different countries in his days, all throughout the years. And he recently, with a whole bunch of other friends of ours, went to Thailand, I think for the second time now. And apparently the travel to go to Thailand, is relatively affordable. To which I was like, oh man, that sounds like a lot of fun. I would love to try doing that sometime. And while I do mean that, at the same time, part of me also thinks about, okay, I have never been to another non-speaking English country except for France when I was very young. And I was with my mom, who when we went, because I was like 7 at the time, she studied a fair amount of French before we went, so that we were able to get around and do okay there, right? And I always thought, okay, if I were to go to like an Asian country or a Middle Eastern country or otherwise, or a non-English speaking European country, I would want to try as much as I can to maybe not even just learn language related things, but also just be aware of some important cultural related things, so that I could be sensitive to the other people whose land I am visiting of my own accord. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like it definitely depends on which country that you go to, how common tourism is there, what the kind of atmosphere is and everything. But in the fact that the furry community is very open and accepting in general, just as folks, would you say that maybe maybe on like a smaller scale, but still something like kind of on the same sort of idea. Going to a furry convention would almost be sort of like if you were going to a different country and you just had to be aware of like, okay, this is how it is here, this is how people act here, this is what people do here, kind of thing. Not even that extreme.
No, I don't think so. Just because, I mean, really at the end of the day, we're very down to earth people. Like, because we have to walk around every day of our lives. We strap on our work boots, we put our lunch in our lunch pail, we go to work, we put on our hard hat. We do that every day. So it's not like we have such a bizarre means of interaction that we can't even function in the real world. And really, it's not that big of a far cry when we go to conventions. There is a certain amount of openness we can portray at conventions that we don't get to do normally. For example, I don't get to be as affectionate or as goofy of a person as I would like to be out in my normal day-to-day life, as opposed to when I'm at a convention. But really, it's not. I don't consider it a big far cry. It's not total culture shock. I mean, it's like Bosco said. You realize very quickly at the end of the day, we are alike, just like you and me. We're not so different, you and I.
Solid reference.
I guess on kind of spinning off of that too. So Midwest FurFest was in Chicago.
Yes.
Zach, you I imagine have been to quite a few furry conventions in your time.
This Midwest FurFest 2015 was only my 4th furry convention.
Okay, so well then offhandedly, what are the other ones that you have been to before?
I went to Midwest FurFest in 2014 as well. I went to Anthrocon in 2013, and I spent one day at Furlandia, which is the local Portland furry con, in 2014 as well.
Okay. Are there any other ones in particular, maybe like some big ones or like in like major, cities and states or countries or whatever that like maybe you would think to recommend, or ones that you've heard good things about to people who maybe might be intrigued?
If I was going to recommend any convention, honestly, Midwest FurFest all the way, man. It is such a wonderful convention. It's well programmed. It's well put together. The volunteer staff are great. The hotel is great. The people who go are great. I just can't say enough good things about that convention. It is, in my mind, the perfect convention experience, hands down, no question.
Okay.
But I mean, there are a lot of really great cons.
Perfect,
one that popped up just recently called Biggest Little Fur Con. It's in Reno, Nevada. It just popped up in 2013, and it's been growing like wildfire. In its first year, it had about 700 attendees. Its next year, 2014, it doubled its attendees to 1,400. This year, 2015, rather last year now, it almost doubled its attendance again to 2,400 now. And that's because that's a convention. The reason why a lot of people are really, having fun with this one is because they take the convention theme to a whole new level. Just briefly, a convention theme is kind of like a sort of loosey-goosey idea, like say maybe one convention is pirate themed, so you'll see, fursuits running around with little pirate hats on and little eye patches on. Nothing that huge, just kind of like a little for fun sort of thing. Some of the events are kind of centered around it. Not that big of a deal. What Biggest Little FurCon does is it goes, oh no, we're going to take this to the next level. So the theme of 2015 was a Big Brother type theme, where they had posters all over the hotel walls, like, obey Big Brother. There were little cameras everywhere. There would be announcements over the PA about Big Brother. And then halfway through the convention, suddenly those posters were getting torn down. The PA was getting interrupted by a group known as the Resistance. So you started seeing all this resistance propaganda popping up throughout the convention. And then finally, at the end of the convention, the Resistance defeated Big Brother, and now the theme for next BLFC is going to be the Resistance.
That's freaking awesome.
So they basically tell a story.
Yes, they tell a story throughout the
con.
convention.
Wow.
That's what they do with their theme, and that's why this convention is just exploding like it has been.
Wow. That's very, because that's really interesting too, because there's been a few anime conventions that now I've been able to go to. One in California, I think one in Alabama, Comic-Con, that do the same kind of thing, where they consider it's like Comic-Con, which I've been to as a guest a couple years in a row. That was like, they call instead of the years, they call it Comic-Con Season 3, Comic-Con Season 4, and they continue the story with their whole they have like a lore of characters that they revisit. I imagine like Little Big Fur Con probably also has like some mascot characters that are specifically associated with the story that they're telling, something kind of like that maybe. Okay.
From what I've heard, yes, I did not actually attend. This is all just what I've heard.
Okay, cool. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's actually very, very creative. See, because that's like the way that I would like do like my parties like growing up as a kid is I would have like some kind of plot to them, and then we'd like associate like a video game or something to it and do that.
I mean, that's such a big thing just for the fandom in general is, we are sort of looking for fun stories that we can then insert our characters into and just let our characters go nuts in all these stories, so that we can fully pretend, because that's all, like I said, that's all we're doing at the end of the day. We're just playing pretend. And you give us a fun jungle gym to pretend on. Yeah, we're going to go for it.
Does Timber have any? Does the character of Timber have any funny stories from? Because I mean, Bosco's told lots of stories on his end, but did you have any that would be worth sharing from that perspective from Midwest
in-character
FurFest or
experience at a
anything
convention?
like
I do not have a fursuit yet, so I'm only really just going as myself at this point. But there are still points where I can kind of interact, with other people the same way that Timber himself would. That's where the goofiness comes from. That's where the affection comes from. That's where Timber's he's a dumb puppy. That's kind of one of his big things. He's very dumb, very lovable, very dumb. And so I get to kind of behave that way around these people, whereas I couldn't do that normally. And that's a really fun thing. So yeah, there is a level of character interaction that even when you're not, even when you haven't spent, a certain amount of money to get a certain kind of fursuit, you can still get that level of interaction where you are still playing pretend, but this time in person as your character, even without the suit.
Okay, cool. See, because that's one aspect. Like, see, that's the thing. I feel like if I were much more involved in the community, I would have so much goddamn fun with that, because I used to do that with my Halloween costumes every year.
It's never
like,
too late.
I was in Perfect Cell one year, and I went around like pretend suctioning people. Probably freaked them out a little bit, because that was not,
hey.
a middle school is not the best place to be like, I'm acting all creepy and weird or whatever. Even if it is
I didn't come to
Halloween or
school
whatever.
to be suctioned today, pal.
Not that kind of suction. I was poking them with my tail. You've seen Dragon Ball Z, God damn it.
No, that's actually what I meant. See, you thought that I was being dirty.
Oh, well.
Good job, Chris.
But at the same time, well, for one thing, if I were to actually do that, I would want to go all out in a costume, and that would be shit tons of money that I don't think I would have the funds to spend anymore. But also because I'm always resistant about doing that kind of thing, like in like a new world that I haven't like existed in, just because I'm so like inexperienced, and I always feel like I'm gonna be like out of my element and like fuck it up and then like kind of ruin it for other people. I don't know.
You can't really, so long as you respect other people's boundaries, you can't really fuck up fursuiting. It's so open-ended. You see every year at a new convention, there will be new, people with their, first fursuit ever running around, just kind of getting into character, getting into that idea. I mean, there's no like specific criteria. There's no, written set of rules anywhere. One of my friends actually posted just a 3-step guide to fursuiting recently. Let me see if I can briefly remember it.
Step 1, buy the costume. Step 2, put it on. Step 3, have fun.
No, it's basically just, respect the boundaries of other people, put a little heart into it, have fun. That's basically all you got to do as a fursuiter. That's it. That's it.
And basically from the costume mascot perspective of it, like I got trained on how to perform as Scooby. The big thing that I learned about performing in a costume is make every interaction that you have with somebody, in my case it was the guests that were coming to Universal Studios, make every interaction with that guest or that person special and unique.
Yeah.
Take a moment to really give them the attention they deserve. If they want a picture, give them a pose, give them something unique, and then give them a firm goodbye, like, hey, it was good to see you, whatever you want to do. And I didn't even have that. Like, a lot of them will talk in their costumes. I couldn't even do that as Scooby. Like, it had to be all physical. So it's a completely different way to perform and to have fun. And I will say personally, one of the biggest joys and the reason why I enjoyed being Scooby so much was the look on a little kid's face when you would come up to him and you would interact with him. And he's like, I came 3,000 miles just to see Scooby, and you're my favorite. And literally, you melt. I absolutely would melt. My favorite story as Scooby is there was somebody who really wanted to see SpongeBob, and they had gone in. And the guys were like, oh, we have nobody out there right now. Everybody's going, because it was the end of the day. All the costume people were taking their costumes off. And I had just gotten off set as Scooby. And they were like, yeah, this little girl wants to see SpongeBob. And SpongeBob was gone. I'm like, do you want to ask them if they want to see Scooby? Went out there. Yeah, they'd love to see Scooby. Put the head back on. They zip me up. I go back out there. And she lit up. This little girl lit up. And I will never forget that moment for the rest of my life. And that's what these guys like. That's what they're doing.
And even as an adult, there's something like fun and magical about it. Like when we went to go see the Bugs Bunny of the Symphony
Oh my
show
God, how cool
recently.
is that?
Yeah, and they had like first of all, well, for one thing, because they have Warner Brothers money behind
Yeah,
it.
of
They had the
course.
awesome Bugs and Daffy suits. The guys in them, I remember you even saying that they were both pretty good in terms of like their performance. And like it was still fun to go up and like, oh, let's get a picture and like hang out and like be cool with them or whatever.
I mean, I'll be honest, they were okay. They definitely
yeah,
like,
okay,
they wanted to
alright.
get off set though. They were like, I am so done with this.
Well, probably because they've been doing it for hours, I imagine.
Probably.
By the way, little story on that note too. I've just remembered this from the depths of my mind. Went to New York Comic Con one year. This was 2006, and already I know people are going to be putting two and two together with this. So I went to the Sega booth with Mike Lucas in 2006, and they had a Sonic suit worker there. And I was excited about a certain game that I didn't know was going to be the worst thing ever made, and was playing the demo there. And I went up to go get, I wanted to go like get a high five or like a picture or whatever with the Sonic suit worker. And Mike Lucas was with me. And for those of you who don't know, Mike Lucas his hair is about as spiky as Alpha from Tone. And I went up to Sonic and was trying to like interact with him and be all cool. I was still like a mid to late teenager, I think, at the time. And I go up to him, and the Sonic suit worker totally ignored me. And he goes over and he's like pointing at Mike's hair, which was all spiky, be like, yo, you're cool, and like giving thumbs up to him and everything. And he totally snuffed me. And I was heartbroken because I was like, what the fuck, Sonic? I was the one who was excited to come
I
see
like
you.
Knuckles better anywhere.
You know, whatever. And then my friend, that's not true, first of all. And then Zach later illustrated a picture of me punching Sonic in the face with tears in my eyes because I was heartbroken over him not hanging
See,
out
that's
with
what I
me.
mean. Is you want to give each person their individual moment. Like, yeah.
So he was bad at his job. Thanks, Sonic guy.
We're all about making people laugh, making people smile. We're all about helping people. Oh, shit! One
they're
thing I
entertain-
completely
Liz-
forgot to mention, actually. Speaking about helping people, fandoms always do supported charity. There's always charity auctions going on at every single fandom. Midwest FurFest actually raised over $60,000 for this Illinois charity called Save a Vet.
They actually raised $62,020.71. So over $62,000. And here's the best part about that story, and this was on their website, and I put it in the article as well. They were actually a little bit short at the end of the convention from 60,000. I think they had like 5960 or something like that. And so they made this announcement at the closing ceremonies, and people literally rushed the stage, according to the article, and just trying to get that extra $400 in. And as soon as it was over, they actually had gotten it up to over $62,000. Like that's the kind of support that this community has for not only their own people, but for people that are charitable to animals or things that they're passionate about. And you don't see that everywhere. Like you just don't. And they go out of their way to be like, hey, this is something we're passionate about.
That is some Disney magic shit.
It's
right
magic,
there.
dude.
The fact that
I said,
It's funny you mention that.
Conventions are where the magic happens, man. That's what I'm saying.
It's funny you mention that. I have a new saying that I actually stumbled upon by accident, and it's an acronym for the word magic. And it's make awesome gestures in costume.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
My God.
Yes.
So, because that's what I did as Scooby. That's what these people do. They are making magic when they bring these characters to life and entertain people. Because that's all I see them at. They're just entertainers. It's not weird. They're just entertainers.
As much as that almost sounds like a closing thought, we've been going for now over an hour, an hour that I very much enjoyed, and thank you guys so much for joining us.
Not totally.
Any closing thoughts like about the whole thing you guys want to share before we kind of end things?
Zach, I'll let you go first.
Now you go first. I got one, but I'll let you go first.
The big thing that I will leave you guys with is actually a story. And again, this is from the article, but I feel like it's really important. And I wanted to mention it.
No, go right ahead.
A lot of times, in order to get rid of these stereotypes and the stigmas that we have in our minds, we have to have examples of what a community is all about or a group of people is all about. And there's a gentleman by the name of Timothy McCormick. He was a private, an EMS worker. But if you are a furry, you probably know him by the name of Lemonade Coyote. And in 2013, his ambulance was struck by a driver that ran a red light, and he was killed. This is a guy who dedicated himself to other people. I mean, that's an EMS worker. There's no better way to do that than to live a life of basically public service. And I had no idea who this person was. The only reason I had come across him was because Zach showed me a video of a dance competition where this guy by the name of Silverwolf dedicated his routine to Lemonade Coyote. And I researched this guy, I looked him up, and he has a video called It Gets Better 2.0. And it's all about accepting people for who they are and turning the negatives into a positive and pushing through that judgment that you're going to get, whether it's academic, personal, spiritual, professional, your sexual identity, the judgment that comes from the outside, to move through that and to push through that, and that it does get better. And his final thoughts were to pay that message forward. So the reason I wrote the article, the reason I'm talking to you right now, the reason why the jokes don't bother me, the reason why I'm not uncomfortable to say, hey, this is kind of cool and it's interesting and people should check it out if they have an interest, is because I want to pay his message forward of it does get better and it is okay to like what you like. And nobody should feel like they have to hide who they are because it's a little different. And so that's kind of the message that I would leave everybody with, is if this is the stuff that interests you, check it out. You don't have to be a furry to go to one of these cons. You don't have to be a furry to have these discussions. You don't have to be a furry to be able to enjoy this aspect of somebody's life. And that's why I'm so glad that Zach was comfortable to share it with me. We have very different views on this, but at the end of the day, it's something that we can talk about, and it's something that we do have in common is we like cartoons. We like, jumping around and entertaining people. And so I'd say to all of you, pay the message forward and don't be afraid. Don't ask what if. Try it out.
Yeah. I mean, just going off of basically what Bosco said, no matter where you come from, no matter what you do, no matter what your background is, unfortunately, people in the real world are going to judge you negatively for it. So if you think you're curious about this fandom, any aspect of the fandom at all, whether it be you happen to like some of the artists, you happen to like some of the music coming out, you like listening to the DJ sets coming out, you enjoy photographs of the costumes, whatever your interest may be, no matter how big or how small, give it a shot. Because this is one area where when you walk into a furry convention, nobody's going to be judging you. There's room for everybody in this fandom. No matter what your interests in life are, no matter what your career goal is, no matter what your sexuality is, straight, gay, bisexual, trans, asexual, transgender, you will find a home in this fandom. So, look into it. And if you don't end up finding that home, maybe you'll still find a thing or two that you can cherish from it. So you know what? Give it a shot. You'll be welcome here.
Awesome. And I'll say, well, obviously I didn't go to the con. What I would like to add as a closing thought is, Bosco, early on when we started this, you were saying that as a result of going to this convention, you were resolving to want to be more like them, as you consider them to be better people. Those out there who have been following my Kirblog since the year started, or rather since last year ended, I should say. My resolution for this year is I want to do better, and that involves all aspects, including just being a better person. And from all the great stuff that you guys have shared in this last hour, which again very much appreciate, I think we may need to have a discussion.
I think so too.
About perhaps one of these, if they happen to be occurring somewhere in California, then maybe
further confusion.
Mayhaps I'll be found there.
Ooh.
Who knows?
I mean, hey, if you want to become a better person, I mean, I became a better person because I got involved in the fandom. This is where I found my confidence to be myself. I found it here.
And again, I'll say for all the people out there that are not part of the community, I can speak from experience. Like, you can still have a good time. That's why I can still have fun at AX. That's why I can still have fun at Comic-Con, and I can still have fun at MFF, is because there are just cool things to do and cool people to talk to.
We're all about partying and having a good time. It's what we do.
Yeah. I hope, I would imagine, but I'll say at this point, I hope that this certainly was a cool eye opener or something new, exploring wise for people listening to get something out of. These guys told some fantastic stories, and so to anybody listening, that's gonna wrap us up. Well, before I do the end card, please guys, plug yourselves, plug your things where they can find you.
Okay. I have a YouTube channel just by the name Timber Puppers, all one word. Lately what I've been doing is I've been posting dubs of the game Undertale, which has become quite popular lately, and it's immediately become one of my all-time favorite games. I also have a Twitter, same name, Timber Puppers, where if you want to see me playing pretend, it's kind of a mixture of both myself and me being my character. So you're getting all sides of me on that account, and hopefully I have a thing or two to say that you'll find interesting.
Sweet. Mr. Bosco X over there.
I mean, you can follow me on Twitter if you guys would like. It's at EdBoscoVA. So if you want to continue the conversation or just poke me with questions, I try to respond to everybody if I can.
And what video games can we all hear you in, by the way, sir?
I just had a game come out called Legends of Heroes.
Yeah!
Trails of Cold Steel. Yep. That is apparently doing pretty well. So you can check me out as one of the main characters in that. I've got a lot of really cool stuff coming out in 2016. And if you're part of the furry community, some of it's going to interest you because they're not all human characters. I just can't tell anybody about it. So I will definitely keep you guys posted about that kind of stuff on my Twitter. But other than that, I mean, you have Wikipedia and Google. You can figure out what I've been in and what I'm on. So
sweet.
It's all good.
All right. Well, with that all set, thank you guys again.
Thank you.
To everybody listening, if you were listening to all the whole, this is now one of the longest Kirblogs I think we've ever had. So
that's how we do. All right.
Might not have beaten Ben Diskin's record just yet.
What's his record? What's his record? Because I could keep going. I got it.
I don't know.
Yeah, man, how much time we got?
Oh God, probably not. No, we gotta wrap things up because I also have to do something after this. Unfortunately,
that's cool,
I'm so
man.
sorry.
That's cool.
I know.
One thing I do want to throw in, and you could put these links in your, I assume, in the comment section or something.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
There have been 3 articles, mine included, that have been written since MFF. There was one that was done about MFF, about some just people who were staying in the hotel. That is really good, and I can shoot you that link. There was also as Zach mentioned, a convention called Further Confusion that just happened concurrently at the same time as a Smash convention.
If I may, really quickly.
One of these Smash.
Actually, at that convention, an amazing thing happened where the people from the Smash convention were actually kind of bored of the parties happening at the Smash convention and went over and partied with the furries and had a great time hanging out with furries. This one guy.
No joke. And they keep apparently they keep posting about it. But
he's big on Twitter. His name is Sky Williams. Apparently, he's really big in the Smash community. He actually took a photograph with my friend RC Mouse, with RC, wearing his big old fursuit head with the gigantic mouse ears. And if I'm remembering correctly, Sky Williams said something like, "This con is lit. These people are drunk in their animal costumes. Everybody's having a good time. It's tight as fuck."
And again, somebody, it's complete stranger just walks in and is like, "Oh yeah,
these
people are
awesome.
fun." Listen, if furries can do nothing else, it's they know how to have a good time.
Damn right we do.
Absolutely. But there was an article written by one of the Smash players. I don't know. I forget if it was Sky or not.
I think it was just a reporter.
It might have been a reporter, but I thought it was somebody
Either
who
way.
just happened to be there for Smash. They went to FC. They wrote an article about it, and they actually tried on one of the costumes, which I thought was pretty cool. So completely different than my experience.
Wow, awesome. Okay, well, okay.
So and I will send you links to all that stuff, but definitely some articles to check out. And then there's also a really good NBC news story that I can link you to called Furries of Anthrocon, which is the big convention that everybody knows about as far as furries. Yeah. It is called Furries of Anthrocon Beneath the Fursuit, an NBC. It was a really, really well done.
They actually went and it was the first time in the community where we actually saw a really positive journalism story coming out about us. It was really nice. It was really nice.
So I'm just saying it's not really cool anymore just to be that hater. I'm just saying.
Check out I'll have all that stuff linked in the description below, so please check that out. Leave your feedback and your comments below on all the stuff we've talked about. If you have suggestions for future Kirblog topics that may even be further anthro-related or otherwise,
I'll come back. I don't care.
Mayhaps you will hear one or two or either, or maybe even with Scott or Malcolm. I think we wanted to try to have Malcolm this time, but I'm assuming he's probably busy today.
We can get Malcolm for the next one.
yeah, for sure. Leave a comment about that. And if you, again, as always, you have suggestions for general anything future Kirblog topics, leave a comment about that or hit me up on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, etc. This will be coming out actually the day after, if I end up doing a promo or whatever for it, Bosco's panel at Anime Los Angeles.
Yes.
Hopefully, because we're time traveling right now, we're recording this on Monday.
We are. If you guys are going to be at Anime Los Angeles, come find Chris and I. We're going to be there.
Well, hopefully, by the time this came out, hopefully you already found us if I was there and if you were there for the con at all, and hopefully you enjoyed it and what we had to say. It was great. It went awesome. Wasn't it a great panel,
Oh,
Bosco?
I love
yeah,
it. The
totally.
panel was fantastic. The room was overflowing. We had to,
Yeah, totally.
It was totally cool.
Yeah, I love the part where Xander took his pants off.
That
and,
was
in
that
front
was
of everybody.
fantastic. I mean, that's
Absolutely,
typical
yeah.
Xander. That's
I actually
absolutely.
teleported
Okay.
into the panel just spontaneously at the moment, just so I could laugh at Xander, and then I teleported back away.
Oh,
Remember that?
God,
That was
yeah,
Then
great.
he
was-
left.
it-
Yeah.
It was unforgettable. Okay, I have to go.
All right,
I'll
see
talk
you
to
later,
you guys
man.
later.
Thanks
Bye,
for having us.
everybody.
Bye, guys.
It's a pleasure. Bye-bye.